Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to speak about the rule of law in Iraq. There is a presumption in this question that there is a proper government in Iraq. Because if you want to talk about the rule of law, then you would need to have a government. I would like to suggest to you that, in fact, the government in Iraq lacks legitimacy. And this is, we can go over some of the background to it. Although everybody have noticed these days in the media, everybody is talking about the 10th anniversary of Iraq. Sometimes we get some Iraqi traitors who gave false information to the British government. That's why we went to war. And there is another traitor who gave the Americans another story. And because of that, we went to war. We've had Tony Blair on television. We've had Mr. Bush on television. Those two men have not even dared to say that they were wrong or they made a mistake. It's an event happened, so they are not really all that concerned. But I would like to suggest to you that this is not really true, because the invasion and the war of Iraq had nothing to do with 11 September. It had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. It had nothing to do with the weapons of mass destruction. Because in 1989, that's before all these events, the USA, the Congress, and it is not the administration, this is the people of the United States of America, in the form of their Congress, issued the law which is called the Liberation of Iraq Act. That law provides that I can read for you the text of it, but it provides literally that the US administration, the policy of the United States is to support efforts to remove the regime headed by Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq and to replace that regime. This is the Iraq Liberation Act. It also provided that they should give, the US administration should give weapons and should give them media coverage. So that's why they created the Free Iraq Radio, which was headed at that time by Kamiran Qaradaghi, who is the advisor to the president of Iraq. I would like also to suggest to you that Iraq now, if one looks at the quote-unquote rule of law in Iraq, as if the hundreds of thousands of people who were killed and still being killed, either by explosions, terrorists, or disappearances, or torture, as if this is not enough. The day before yesterday, the Iraqi government hanged 4 people. On the 17th of March, they hanged 10 people. On the 14th of March, they hanged 8 people. They hanged 129 people last year. They have a famous law in Iraq, which is called the anti-terror law. This act has Article 4 in it, which says that anybody who is accused of terrorism must be penalized by death. And Article 3 of the law defines what are terrorist acts. And in fact, it's couched, you have to accept my word because I'm a lawyer, I've studied law in Iraq, I understand these things. It's actually couched in such loose words. I swear I can apply it to anybody. If I am so minded, any act can become an act of terrorism in Iraq, and anybody who's arrested, tortured, and admits for his crime, then we have a terrorist, and Article 4 says we have to hang him. Incidentally, paragraph 2 of Article 4 says that anybody who knows of a terrorist act or a plan of terrorism must be penalized with life imprisonment. Now, few months ago, Prime Minister al-Maliki said, and it is recorded, it's public record, he says that he knew that the Vice President, whose name is Tariq al-Hashimi, is a terrorist. And the Prime Minister actually knows about him for the last 3 years. So in fact, paragraph 2 of Article 4 of the Terrorist Act of Iraq, and I'm not inventing any of these things, this is reality. Now, Iraq has, in the ordinary criminal code, 48 acts that are penalized by death. This is in addition to the Terrorist Act. So in Iraq, it is really very, very easily it's very, very easy to actually hang anybody. They always can be found guilty of things. The judiciary in Iraq, you know, the subject is so wide, I don't know where to start. But in reality, the government in Iraq, the US had the law, then they invaded Iraq, and the invasion of Iraq is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations. And if you do not believe me, you can believe Kofi Annan, the outgoing Secretary General, who actually said on the BBC, and it is on record, that that was an unlawful war. Of course, we all forgot that he said this 18 months later. Now, I don't know whether he didn't know before or he knew and didn't say. Then they appointed Bremer as the Viceroy of Iraq. He issued 100 orders, 16 regulations, and 12 memoranda. By these decisions, he has changed everything in Iraq. Totally, the whole lot was changed by Bremer. And this is contrary to Article 43 of the Hague Rules, and it is contrary to Article 54 of the Geneva Fourth Convention and Article 64 of the same convention. These decisions he made they didn't come from nothing. When the US produced that Iraq Liberation Act, they found some 250 experts in every field: diplomats, lawyers, economists, educationists, ambassadors, businessmen. They created 16 working groups within the USA to replan Iraq after they invaded and they liberated. One of these commissions was called the Transitional Justice Committee. The first thing he did, Bremer, was to issue an order by which he summarily dismissed almost 50% of the judges of Iraq. Now, before Bremer came, the backlog of cases in the courts in Iraq was something like 3 years because of the lack of establishment and offices and courts and judges and what have you. Mr. Bremer came, immediately he dismissed 50% of them, and then they went around, recruited some people who are law graduates, yes, but some of them were, in fact, bad people. Some of them have served sentences, some of them were thieves, some of them were all sorts of things. But obviously, post-2003, everybody became really a victim of Saddam Hussein. So it doesn't matter. So even somebody who has done something really bad and he's been in prison, he becomes a victim of Saddam Hussein, so he becomes a prominent person post-2003. He set up the higher federal court, and he appointed the president of the court, which is still there. That court, why am I referring to this court? Because this is the court, this is the highest court. This court is doing all the things that a court shouldn't be doing. So for instance, when there was an election, the Americans wanted Ayad Allawi he won by, 2-3 votes or something, he should have formed the government. Maliki said, no, it's the Constitution says it's the bigger bloc. And the bloc is not now. The bloc is when after that, we become a bloc. And he asked for the court to give an opinion, and the court readily gave him an opinion. Yes, absolutely, you're right. So the Americans kept Maliki, and somehow they tried to convince Allawi they would give him something. But at the same time, in Côte d'Ivoire, in the Ivory Coast, was precisely the same exercise happening. A president who has lost the election by 2 or 3 votes, he wanted to stay, The incumbent one wanted to take over. America took the case to the Security Council. They imposed sanctions, and eventually they changed it because they wanted the one who won by one vote. And they actually wanted Alawi, but unfortunately Alawi doesn't have any backing. Maliki has all the army and all the things. Now, I think probably I should stop somewhere here because it's more than 3 minutes.